The stage lights dimmed to a gentle glow, casting a golden hue over the empty microphone that now stood at the center of the grand auditorium. The crowd murmured softly, wondering who would come out next. Then, from the side curtain, a small figure appeared. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, with pigtails tied in ribbons and a well-worn teddy bear clutched tightly in her hand. Her tiny shoes tapped nervously against the wooden floor as she walked toward the microphone, the spotlight following her every move. The judges exchanged glances, some smiling gently, others skeptical. She was so young, so fragile. Could she really stand on this stage and perform? When she finally reached the microphone, she took a shaky breath. The teddy bear pressed to her chest as though it were her shield. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, yet it carried through the silence. "I'm here to sing for my big brother," she said softly. "He's very sick, and I just want him to smile again." The auditorium stilled completely, as if the whole world paused to hear her. In that moment, the crowd knew they weren't about to witness just a performance. They were about to witness love in its purest form. Backstage, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. While the audience focused on the little girl out front, a fragile boy sat quietly in his wheelchair just behind the curtain. He was thin, his skin pale, his breathing shallow, yet his eyes never left his sister. A soft blanket was draped over his shoulders, but nothing could hide the toll his illness had taken. Still, he had begged to be here tonight, insisting that he wanted to see her shine for him. Doctors had said he didn't have much time left, but he refused to let that stop him from watching the one person who gave him strength. His sister's words at the microphone reached his ears, and his lips curved into the faintest smile. She had promised him that she would sing his favorite song so he would never feel alone, even when he was scared. As the stage lights washed over her, he whispered weakly, "Oh, you can do this, sis. Make them all hear it." His small hand tightened around the armrest of the wheelchair, his eyes glistening with pride. To everyone else, she was just a child stepping into a big moment, but to him, she was his hero, his hope, and the reason he still believed in tomorrow. The music began softly, a single piano note echoing through the hall, and the little girl closed her eyes. At first her voice was delicate, almost trembling, like a fragile bird testing its wings. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience, but then something remarkable happened. With each line, her voice grew steadier, fuller, carried not by skill alone but by the depth of her love. She wasn't just singing notes, she was telling a story, pouring her heart into every word as though they were a prayer whispered straight to heaven. The audience sat frozen, their earlier doubts fading away. They realized this wasn't the performance of a child trying to impress anyone. This was a sister singing for her brother's life, for his smile, for one more day he could feel joy. Her voice cracked slightly in one verse, and for a moment her tiny hands tightened around the microphone stand. But instead of breaking, she gathered herself and sang even stronger, as if she could carry her brother's pain with her voice alone. By the second chorus, tears were already glistening in the eyes of strangers across the hall. The little girl's song had transformed into something greater. It had become hope, and every person listening felt it. Halfway through the song, something no one expected happened. From backstage, her brother gripped the arms of his wheelchair and with visible effort, began to push himself up. His body trembled, weak and unsteady, but his determination burned brighter than his pain. Slowly, shakily, he took one step onto the stage, his blanket slipping from his shoulders. The audience gasped, some even covering their mouths in disbelief. The little girl's eyes widened when she saw him, her voice faltering for just a heartbeat. But then she steadied herself, tears glimmering, and kept singing, this time louder, stronger, as though her song was the force carrying him forward. Their eyes met in the glow of the spotlight, and in that gaze was everything words could never capture: love, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between them. The boy lifted his trembling hand toward her, and she reached out with her free one, still clutching the microphone with the other. The sight of them, two children, fragile yet fearless, wrapped the room in silence so deep that even the judges forgot to breathe. In that moment, it was no longer a performance. It was a fight against time, a declaration that love was stronger than illness, stronger than fear. As the final notes of the song lingered in the air, the hall erupted into stunned silence. For a breathless moment, no one moved, as if The entire audience was suspended in the weight of what they had just witnessed. Then, like a wave breaking, applause thundered through the auditorium. People rose to their feet, clapping with such force that the walls seemed to shake. Some were openly weeping, tears streaming down their faces, while others held their hands over their hearts, unable to contain the emotion. On stage, the little girl finally let the microphone slip from her grasp, and rushed into her brother's arms. He collapsed against her, his frail body trembling, but his smile glowed brighter than it had in months. "That was perfect," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of the crowd. "You made me feel alive again." She hugged him tighter, her tears soaking into his blanket, and the audience, watching this embrace, clapped even louder, cheering not for a performance, but for love itself. The judges wiped at their eyes, struggling to speak. They knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable, something that would stay with them forever. And for the little girl, none of the applause mattered. What mattered was that her brother was smiling. The judges finally found their voices, though each spoke with tears shining in their eyes. One leaned forward, her voice trembling, saying, "That wasn't just a performance. That was the purest act of love we've ever seen on this stage." Another judge, usually known for his harshness, stood up, applauding with uncharacteristic emotion, admitting that her song had touched something deep in his heart. But the greatest reaction came not from the panel, but from the audience. The crowd began to chant, not just her name, but her brother's too. Their voices filled the arena, a tidal wave of support that wrapped the two children in warmth. The boy, who had spent months surrounded by hospital walls and quiet sorrow, suddenly found himself bathed in love from thousands of strangers. For the first time in so long he laughed, a fragile but genuine sound that carried through the hall like music of its own. The little girl looked up at him, her eyes sparkling, and whispered, "See? You're not alone. Everyone loves you." In that moment, the stage wasn't just a place for talent, it became a place of miracles. And as the lights faded, the world was reminded that even the smallest voices can create the greatest hope.